sister of the brother. They were approximately that age. When we got to Birkenau, they hauled us in these freight wagons that you see on railroads, boxcars, that they lock the door up and you have tiny little windows. And you traveled for 3 days there, from one country to another country, and they didn't give us any food. The little kids didn't understand what's happening. I was already an adult. I was 12 years old. My old grandmother also was in her late 80s probably. She also didn't understand. These same peasants who worked for the Jews in our town where we were raised, maybe for 1,000 years Jews lived in, with the fancy Gentile Christian world, went to collect the animals, the dogs, to make sure they have water. They don't starve to death, but they didn't have any mercy on these little children. When we got to Birkenau, Birkenau is the outside of Auschwitz. The world only knows Auschwitz. Actually, the main exterminating camp did take place in Birkenau. Auschwitz had a big camp too, but it was mostly after you went through Birkenau that they moved you to work in the factories. When you arrived at Birkenau, there was a gate where the railroad pulled in, and on that gate was Arbeit macht das Leben frei. That means in German, work makes your life free. As soon as the train got in there, there was 5 or 6 different tracks, and all of a sudden a lot of noise you heard, and dogs, and they had Jewish prisoners there already who worked there, and they were called Canadians, Canadas. The reason why they're called Canadians because they had some passports as Canadian citizens, and the Germans didn't recognize it anyhow, they deported them. They were the first to open up the freight wagons, and the German Gestapo with the dogs were hollering, "Raus, raus, raus." And everything was so tense that you really didn't know what's happening. You couldn't even relax and think. And on the main square where you came off the freight wagons, there was a doctor with beautiful leather boots, with leather jacket, and had a little stick, left, right, left, right. And most of the time, right was people who were young, could go to work. Left used to be old women with children. I was not an adult, but I was wild. I got lost between the adults. Once I snuck my way through, I couldn't come back. So I went through the procession what the rest of the adults went through. You came into a big hall. You had to take your clothes off. You walked out from that freight wagon with just what you have. They told you you will get your belongings later. You took your clothes off, they shaved you if you had hair, and then they sprayed you and you took a shower. When you got through the other side, the assembly line, they gave you striped clothes, white and blue or green, and they gave you a round cap. From there they moved us to barracks. There was thousands of them, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, different camps, and each one had a row of barracks, and this. And each barracks, they could have put 500, 600 people, because you had triple bunks, three heights on it, and each bunk you had 6 or 7 people sleeping on it. So with each transport, a certain amount of kids snuck by. And that means they weren't little kids, but 12 years, 13 years old. And from there, the German industry came and said, we need 5,000 young women to work in Oranienburg, 150 Jews to clean up the Warsaw Ghetto. So they took them out and they tattooed them with a pen, boom, 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 and they gave them a number, and you got a serial number here, the same number you had here, and they put one on your pants. And from there you were transferred to the labor camps. But when it came to little kids, 12 years old, nobody wanted them. So they finally accumulated 40,000 kids. You know, you didn't get cornflakes for breakfast. And you got skinny, and you got sick. And there was a Dr. Mengele there. And he was the main commander of the whole health of the people. He took us, all the kids, and moved us to A camp. A camp was the only camp that only had one barracks on one side. The rest of the camps had barracks on both sides, and there was an open corridor. He even gave us better food. Gave us a little cabbage, something, and we were isolated for about 4 weeks until we got a little better. And then he moved us back to C camp, and finally they let a rumor out in the camp that all the weak boys, I was in a boys camp, all the weak boys will be transferred to a farm, to a kartoffel farm. That means a potato farm. You know, that sounds very good. Here I'm going to go out, at least I'll be able to eat all the potatoes in the world. Well, they take us out to a main square, and there you took your shirt off, and they also had a height. So you went through, if you had reached that height, and if you had some flesh on your bones, you went one side. If you were skinny, you went to the other side. But again, they didn't really use force, because the kid who they wouldn't accept to the right, what can he do? The other one figured he's getting a bargain. And they selected these kids, and then at night they moved one group into one barrack and the other one to other group. I also was selected to go with the skinny kids. All of a sudden I got an urge I don't want. So I snuck my way out. I was all the time learned how to survive. I went back with these healthy kids. As soon as we took us back, the last time it was Yom Kippur Eve. When we came back to the camp, it was already dark. And the next morning, we didn't work. They let us out. But the weakling, the children, what they were weak, were surrounded by guards. They couldn't go out. At that time, the children realized that they're not sending them to a potato farm. If not, they wouldn't have to lock them up. In the meantime, we also learned in Birkenau, I went around crying, I want to go back to my mother. I didn't have a father by then. My father was killed already years ago. So they had a section in C camp what were called Sonderkommando. That means a special group. Their task was strictly to work in the crematoriums. The crematoriums was a very horrible thing to see. It's a very horrible way of dying. When they lock people up and gas them, that's the most disgraceful way of torturing people. Because what happens? You're searching for air, and one body climbs up because you become like an animal, and one body climbs up on the second, and you wrap around against each other, almost like roots of a tree. And their job was, once they were dead, to take them out from that crematorium and wheel them into a oven, and they threw them in, and in the ovens they were burned to death. But they were in the camp also isolated, because the Gestapo did not want them to tell other people what's happening, because we really didn't know. So when I asked them, where is my mother? So they pointed out, you see that flame? This is where your mother. And as you were there, you learned that you see a transport coming this afternoon. 4 hours later, you seen the chimney smoking. So you knew already what's happening. So let's go back to the kids. These weak kids, all of a sudden, the lights went out in the whole camp. They came in with dump trucks, dogs, and they loaded these boys up on the dump trucks and just took them right out, you know where. Never came back. And this is the way the extermination went on until they ran out of Jews. The last transport of Jews I still remember came from Litzmannstadt, that is known in Lodz. And most of them went straight to the crematorium because they were very, very unhealthy. Now, most of you kids, when you hear something in school or at home, you figure dad, mom, grandma all made these up stories. I was there. I didn't make no stories up. I was there, I lived through it. I had a father one time, I had a mother, I had sisters, I had brothers. I don't have nobody. I'm the only one who survived from my family. See, what I learned that you gotta remember, Jewish people must take care of themselves. That you kids should learn that we gotta be democratic, not to light candles after Jews no more. If somebody hits a Jew, you hit back. Let's light candles after the Goyim. You don't go, it's all right to have a black eye, but you make sure you give somebody back too, like they are doing in Israel today. You can't just go around with your head down and see we are. Otherwise, if you will depend on the mercy from the world for you, then will be another tragedy like it's happened with the Kurds, what most kids of you don't understand. So that is the story about the Shoah, and I could go on for hours, but I don't think it's necessary. If you kids have any questions, you could ask me.
Jamie? What did they feed you when you were at the concentration camp?
What they fed us, they gave you in the morning something. At 5 o'clock they woke you up, and you had to go outside, and you didn't have heavy clothes, you know. You had very thin clothes, and it was cold. It's in Poland, and the climate is more like up in the Poconos region. You got muddy water, and it was black, and they claimed that was coffee. That was your breakfast. At lunch, you got a little bit of soup. I don't know what was in there. Maybe grass, hay, who knows. At night, you got a good supper. You never gained calories from it. It was a slice of bread, maybe an inch thick, and it had mostly sawdust in a piece of margarine. You know, that you go in a restaurant where they give you these tiny little pieces of margarine, something like that was your full meal. But on Sunday, we were treated a special meal. You got some pea soup at lunchtime.
There's a question behind you.
Yeah.
How was it when you tried to survive? Where were you staying?
Well, I slept in barracks, I slept on the streets, slept in empty houses, you learn just, you have no choice, you have to run. They hit you, you keep running. Didn't they? You couldn't go back and complain to mom. There was no mom. Had to do everything for yourself. You couldn't walk, so they shot you.
Emily?
With like 85% of everybody in the Holocaust dying, how did you survive?
Of the 15% that did make it, there was all the time a certain amount who made it. It's 15% according to your estimation. Don't know where you got that figure, but you were saying yourself that's 15%. So I'm one of the 15%.
That's pretty good.
Huh?
That's pretty good.
Well, I don't know if it's good, but they couldn't, just like you sweep a floor, you know. You can't really pick up all the dirt. Some of it remains on there. You know, you keep sweeping again with a dust broom and a dustpan, some remains. The same thing. They maybe killed people. There was all the time some did remain, escape.
What was your health condition when you were finally little?
My health condition?
When you were free?
Oh, was probably better than it's right now. I was skinny, top shape. I mean, it's something that you never had the thinking how you felt. You knew all the time you were on the go. You have to go to survive. See, you never had time to think about what aches here and aches here. You had to move. So I never gave it a thought, but after that, much later, when they gathered us children up by the joint, which was an arm of the United Jewish Appeal, who I support, and they gathered us kids together and they wanted to bring us to America, they rejected us all. They had to send us to an area where to get some good food and fresh air before we got accepted for a visa to America. So we were not in the best health.
Did they do the thing with babies?
Yes, they done a lot worse with babies. If I would tell you something, you will not sleep for the next 4 weeks. So believe me, they done a lot worse with babies. Because the babies are the most helpless thing in the world. At least if they hit me, you know, I ran. They caught me again, they gave me another. They couldn't do nothing with the babies. They done very cruel thing with the babies.
How did you escape?
I didn't escape. I just went through the cycle until the cycle came to an end. I was liberated on the road while they were marching at the last moment when they knew the war is gone. I believe the Americans were already in Nuremberg, and I was in Flossenburg. They called out, that was already a mixed camp between Jews and other nationalities. They called all the Jews to report down, and they took us Jews out to the train to their plan, I don't know. And as soon as we got to the open freight, coal cars, this time it was cars without a roof, they started moving. The Gestapo sat in the middle there to eat breakfast. All of a sudden, American flyers came and gave them a greeting in the morning. They all ran away, including us, but I happened to crawl back, and I finished the breakfast for them. They were looking for me afterwards, but I all the time was a little bit ahead of them. But they couldn't move us anymore, so we had to walk, and it was rainy, and if you couldn't march anymore and you got dizzy, they just take a rifle and hit you in the head and you collapse and they shot you on the spot. So I don't know how I made it, but I made it to the last minute, and all of a sudden we start to march again in the morning. We were slept overnight in a hay barn, packed like sardines. All of a sudden I heard some noise, and all of a sudden the Gestapo threw himself down to the ground, and I turned around and look, I see some crawling tanks with white stars. And I didn't know the difference from white stars, brown stars, nothing. And then everybody disappeared and I remained by myself. And I had problems then too. I didn't know where to go and what to go. Some adult took care of me and managed me until he took me to Budapest, and somebody else picked me up from Budapest and so on. Yes, so I got liberated. At the end, they couldn't keep me no more. Go ahead.
What year were you liberated?
1945, April the 29th. How old? 14. Okay.
Did you ever find out how Hitler died?
How Hitler died?
Yeah.
Do you think for one moment it matters to me to waste even energy for it? Is it very important? The important thing is that he's dead. How he died?
What kind of work did they give you? Like, what did you do?
What kind of work did they give you to do?
Well, in each camp was a different kind of work. I worked in once in coal mines, mining coals. I worked at one time unloading freight of cement, bags of cement bags. And one time I was digging ditches for them. And one time I worked in a stone quarry. And one time I worked in an aircraft industry. So as they moved us around,
Was it hard to do?
it was very hard. Because if you didn't move, they hit you. It was just like you kick a dog. The dog bothers you too much, son, right? You kick him, right? So that's what they treated it.
Jamie,
Were you allowed to shower?
What?
were you allowed to shower?
If you were allowed to shower? No, we didn't have no bathroom facilities in the barracks. Okay? They had it once a week. They took you a place, but it was cold water. Didn't have no water in the rooms. You didn't have nothing. You only have barracks. Big barns with cots in it. Only thing, the cots were 3 levels. You could pile more people into it. And you didn't get dirty. It didn't bother you. We had lice crawling all over. No, we didn't have water. Those facilities, no.
Last question, Ms. Sharowski.
Did you have time, or did you make any friends while you were in concentration camp?
Friends? I get the same people